Before we go any further, let's confirm that WaveLab is talking to our audio interface. So once you've loaded WaveLab, you're going to come over to the File menu, and we'll talk more about these tabs that these menus are on in just a moment. But when you click on File, you're going to look down this list and find Preferences. Then go to the Audio Connections settings and look for the Playback tab. Then we're going to go to the Audio Device menu, and we're going to choose which audio interface you want WaveLab to use. For me, I'm using a Steinberg UR28M, but if you were using the built-in audio interface of your computer, you could select that here. However, most people will want to use a professional audio interface like the UR28M or any of the USB or PCI or Thunderbolt style of audio interfaces. So once you have that established, go to the Playback tab and make sure that your left front and right front outputs are assigned to the physical outputs on your audio interface that you want to use. Typically, that's the output that your studio speakers are connected to. And if you have multiple outputs on your audio interface, you can select from those here. But just make sure that you're using the left and the right outputs on both the left front and right front output destinations. Then if you plan on recording with WaveLab from the analog inputs of your audio interface, you'll need to make sure that those are established on the left and right inputs as well. And again, if you have multiple inputs on your audio interface, you'll want to remember that when you're recording from those desired inputs, you may need to change those settings here in the Recording tab. If you use multiple different audio interfaces or audio connections, you can save the settings here in the preset window, just by clicking here and choosing Save As. But now let's go to one other setting. We're going to come back to the Global Controls and click on the Audio tab. And then for the processing precision, look at the defaults. The plugin processing is 64-bit floating point, and the temporary files that you create when you do any audio editing with WaveLab are going to be in 32-bit floating point. And that's important to know because if you load in a low bitrate file and you do the slightest little edit to that audio file, then it's going to change the processing of WaveLab to 64-bit floating point while you're using WaveLab. Then when you save the audio file, it can be saved in any bit depth that you want. But let me show you what I'm talking about there. If I were to come out of the Preferences window simply by clicking the File tab again, then I'm going to click on this folder icon to open a file, and I'm going to open an audio file, and I'm going to import one of these 16-bit audio files. I can tell it's 16-bit because when you go back to that open window, you'll see that the sample rates and bit depths are listed here. However, there's another way to know, and that is by coming back to the editor window and looking in the lower right-hand corner. You can see here that the audio file itself is a 16-bit 44.1 kilohertz audio file. And if we play this back and look at the bit meter, which is tucked away on this tab in the upper left-hand corner of WaveLab, when I press play, we'll be able to see how many bits we're using in this window. Right now we're using 16 bits because we haven't done anything to this audio file. But let's say I did the slightest little thing, like adjusting the output faders. Let me just touch one of these faders. Just a slight turning down of that left fader will instantly switch the processing on that left channel to 64-bit floating point because the 64-bit F or 64-bit floating point indicator has lit up on the left channel. If we did the same thing to the right channel, just by adjusting that a tiny bit, then came back to the bit meter, we'll see that we're now processing both the left and right channels in 64-bit floating point. The original audio file is still in 16-bit and 44.1 kilohertz. However, any processing that we apply on this file is now going to use the 64-bit floating point bit depth instead. That gives you higher mixing precision, and it removes the rounding errors that are present in all of the digital audio formats. And again, once you've done all the processing, you can save it in any bit depth that you want. So those are the audio connections, and next let's talk about the workspace.